The wind that blew across Viridian 9 felt like a breath stolen from ancient stars, thin, biting, and laced with charged particles that set the skin aflame. Beneath a sky the color of rusted copper, the dozen domes of Colony Pariah huddled together, each one a battered testament to desperation and stubborn hope. Their translucent shells were streaked with the orange dust that never ceased to swirl in relentless cyclones, sanding away paint and pride in equal measure. Inside the central dome, known simply as the hub, Governor Mara Valen paced the length of the observation deck. The glass overhead vibrated with each distant gust, casting shifting mosaics of light and shadow across her stern features. She leaned close to the geomagnetic sensor array, which crackled and hissed, its readouts flickering. Only one of its 6 circuits still functioned, and that on borrowed time. "Report," she said, voice taut. Lieutenant Ronheim stood in the control alcove, fingers dancing over hollow controls. He was tall, lean, with close-cropped hair dusted by the planet's ochre storms. Supply ship scheduled for landing in. He hesitated, glancing at the failing timer. 2 days, if the Empire keeps to schedule. Power reserves are down to 40%. Hydroponics are failing to cycle properly. We'll be lucky to sustain current population without rationing. Mara nodded, though she already knew. Pariah's lifeblood arrived only when the Empire's priorities shifted elsewhere, always tenuous, always late. The settlers never complained. Their silent acceptance felt like a collective bruise. She turned from the sensor to the vast panorama. Beyond the reinforced glass, stone-hued spires jutted from the dusty plain like broken teeth, relics of Viridian 9's violent collision with another world eons ago. At their feet sprawled the colony. Maintenance shuttles parked in haphazard rows, storage sheds patched with repurposed hull plating, and clusters of habitats connected by pressurized tunnels. Many of these tunnels glowed with improvised lighting, handiwork of colonists skilled in jury-rigging. A sudden chime broke the silence. Roan's hollow projector flickered to life, displaying the schematics of the colony's feeble defenses: 2 obsolete rail cannons, 4 automated turrets, and a handful of portable plasma rifles. "We can't hold off a full-scale raid," he murmured. Mara's jaw tightened. "We won't be fighting full-scale," she replied, voice soft but unyielding. She placed a hand on the cold glass. "We'll fight smart." Below them, in the hydroponics bay, rows of emerald lettuce and violet-veined algae swayed beneath artificial lights. The faint hum of nutrient pumps was a lullaby to the weary workers who tended the plant's engineers, medics, even children, tasked with watering fragile shoots. Every living thing here was precious. In the workshop bay, artisans tapped petroresonant alien hides into makeshift armor plates, while others scavenged wreckage from the outskirts of the dome, turning broken drone parts into kinetic shields. A pair of black market cobblers stitched battered boots with the sinewy tendrils of native fauna, ensuring that every footstep across the knife-edged rocks would carry the possibility of balance, not death. At the heart of it all stood Mara, a figure both small and colossal in presence. She was the spark that refused to be smothered by dust and drift. When the colony's elder council questioned her plans, she reminded them of the one thing they still possessed in abundance: ingenuity born of necessity. Pariah was never meant to win, she often said, but it's the ones who can't afford to lose who learn how to survive. As the last double-sun glimmer faded behind the horizon, the red sky deepened to bruised purple. Lights within the domes flickered on, casting long, hopeful columns into the growing darkness. Somewhere beyond the perimeter, the nocturnal predators of Viridian 9 began their mournful calls, a reminder that on this world, everything lived to devour or be devoured. And in that twilight, as the wind carried its first razor-sharp chill of the night, Colony Pariah held its breath. Here, On the edge of empire and oblivion, the weakest would be tested, and perhaps, against all logic, would endure. A distant rumble vibrated through the metal grates beneath Mara's boots, an ominous drumbeat heralding the arrival of death. Outside the reinforced walls of the hub, the sky burned bright as the Hethraxian raider fleet breached the atmosphere. 12 sleek, spindly skimmers spilled from the dusty horizon, their maw-like prow plating glinting with crimson warning lights. Below, Colony Pariah's defenders scattered, scrambling for battle stations amid the hiss of overtaxed airlocks. Lieutenant Ronhyan sprinted down the main corridor, hollering orders. Gunners to turrets, rifle teams, brace at the eastern gate. Engineers reroute power to the railgun. His voice shook with urgency, but his eyes held the fierce calm of a soldier born to fight against impossible odds in the turret nest. Atop Dome 3, Corporal Jazimir wiped sweat from her brow as she calibrated the targeting matrix. The warm projector flickered. Each recalibration stole precious seconds. Through the reinforced viewport, she watched the lead skimmer descend, its mandibles parting to unleash a torrent of blue-white plasma. They're swarming faster than simulations predicted, she hissed into her com. Below her, Mara stood in the control room, flanked by Roan and the colony's chief technician, Arlo Sevic. A holomap glowed between them, halos of red marking the raiders' projected flight paths. Arlo's fingers trembled as he keyed coordinates. Main grid is overloading, he warned. If we push more power into the turrets, the entire network could collapse. Mara's gaze hardened. Then, we collapse it on our terms. She pressed her hand to the console, engaging the Wolfbane override. The ancient program originally designed to consolidate mining laser energy began, rerouting every surplus watt toward Pariah's scant weaponry. Alarms shrieked. Conduit vents belched sparks. Outside, the first turret barked its reply. A jagged beam lanced through the red dust, striking the lead skimmer beneath its dorsal rail cannon. The shot tore through alien armor, rupturing energy coils in a bloom of violet fire. The raider spiraled, its engines flaring wildly before it slammed into Dome 7, shuddering the colony's foundations. Direct shouted, fists pumping. But her triumph quickly turned to dread as the second skimmer banked low, unleashing a hailstorm of plasma bolts. The turret exploded in a cascade of metal and flame, ejecting Jazz into the swirling dust. She hit the ground hard, ears ringing, as her vision danced with fragments of burning wires. Back in the control room, Roan barked into his mic. All gunners, stack on the eastern aperture. I'm taking point with the mobile railgun. He vaulted over a console, sprinting for the breach. Arlo cut his eyes to Mara. If he gets caught out there, he won't, Mara said, pressing her palm firmly against a secondary override. Her words were an unspoken promise. Pariah's sons and daughters would not die unheard, nor unavenged. On the surface, Roan wheeled the aging railgun into position, its cryogenic barrel frosting with coalescing energy. The raiders had barely evaded the first blast when he squeezed the trigger. A silver orb, laced with icy filaments, smashed into the second skimmer's flank, freezing its propulsion matrix in an instant. The craft plummeted, sending a geyser of dust skyward, but with each victory came cost. 2 more skimmers swarmed Roan's position, plasma flickering across his visor. He dove for the nearest rock formation, an anthill of jagged obsidian, and returned fire with his sidearm. Each shot was a prayer, each breath a gift borrowed against fate. Inside the hub, Mara monitored the feed through cracked holoscreens. 5 minutes of carnage had left the colony's defenses on their knees. Power reserves teetered at critical levels, and the hydroponics bay had lost pressure in multiple modules. Yet Pariah had carved a sliver of advantage. 2 skimmers down, 3 crippled, and the rest circling warily. Her fingers hovered over the final command. "Deploy the mines," she ordered. Beneath the red soil lay a lattice of magnetic implosion charges, an old mining project repurposed for war. Arlo's eyes widened in alarm. "We never tested that system under live combat," he cautioned. "It might tear a crater through half the dome." Mara's lips curved in a tight smile. "Then we'll be inside the crater." She hit the activation sequence. Far below, buried charges pulsed with lethal intent. Outside, the raiders sensed. The trap too late. The ground shuddered. Dust erupted in a towering pillar that swallowed 3 skimmers whole. The shockwave rippled across the plain, tearing metal plating from their hulls. One by one, their engines sputtered to silent start as the last raider drifted, lifeless, toward the orange horizon. Mara allowed herself a breath. The shadow in the dust had fallen, just as Pariah's people would, time and again, if need be, to protect their fragile home. Yet in that victory, fleeting and hard-won, the colony's true strength shone, not in shields or cannons, but in the resolve of those who refused to yield. The moment the last Hathraxian skimmer disintegrated in the dust, Mara's chronometer clicked 10 seconds past T-7 minutes. Time stretched, each heartbeat a drumroll in the silent aftermath of annihilation. Against all odds, Perez. Ragged defenders had shattered a veteran fleet in just 7 minutes flat. Ronhayan crouched behind the crater's lip, railgun spent and steaming. His visor reflected a panorama of twisted metal and smoldering wreckage, the carcasses of 6 raiders, half buried in blood-red sand. He exhaled, voice hoarse in his cum. All targets down. Colony grid intact barely. Around him, rifle. Teams picked their way through the wreck, ensuring no alien life signs remained. Inside the hub, technicians scrambled to stabilize the power core. Arlo Sevic's frantic fingers danced across the overload console, pulling conduits and rerouting juice back into life support. "We're losing 40% of our network," he yelled over the klaxon. "If we don't splice in those auxiliary links," Mara cut him off with a single nod. She'd prepositioned redundant lines during last night's storm. Arlo punched through the insulation panels, sparks flying, and the hum of the colony's systems returned, steadier than before. On the surface, Corporal Jasimir emerged, bruised but unbowed, hauling 2 down turret barrels to the supply shuttles. She paused when she saw Ron, stamping over to shield him as dust whipped around them. "You call that showboating?" She joked, though her grin was edged with relief. Ron offered a crooked salute. "Wouldn't be me without risking life." And limb. Nearby, scavenger engineers in patched exosuits dismantled the frozen hulk of the second skimmer. They pried open panels, harvesting plasma coils and circuitry for future use. "Salvage what you can," Mara's voice crackled through the colony frequency. "Tonight we win with what they brought and what we've built." Down in the hydroponics bay, faint cheers echoed as lights flickered on over each nutrient tank. Gardens that had teetered on the brink of death glowed green again. Seedlings unfurled their first leaves in unison, as if celebrating the victory above. Mara climbed to the rim of the impact crater, watching the twin suns descend behind. Viridian's jagged spires. 7 minutes ago, the sky had fallen with fire. Now, in the rosy dusk, Colony Perea stood unbroken, its defenders battered but triumphant. She lifted her voice so every channel could carry the words. "Tell the Empire. Tell every world on. The fringe that Pariah fights as one. Here, the weakest stand tallest. And beneath that bruised sky, a new legend was born in 7 minutes of glory." A week after the battle, Colony Pariah's scarred plains had begun to mend themselves. Crater edges were cordoned off, repair crews in dust-streaked uniforms laying new alloy plating where Hathraxian wreckage had gouged the ground. The air still thrummed with tension. Victory had come at a price, But beneath the central dome, a different kind of tremor pulsed through the colony. One morning, as the twin suns cast long shadows across the hydroponic gardens, a delegation of Empire emissaries arrived in sleek black shuttles. Their polished armor and clipped accents stood in stark contrast to Pariah's patched exosuits and rough-hewn accents. Governor Mara Valen met them in the hub, her expression calm, arms folded over the tailored jacket she'd stitched from salvaged raider fabric. Governor Valen intoned High Commissioner Regis Solon, voice smooth and measured. Your defense exceeded all projections. We seek to understand the methods by which Pariah, a colony deemed indefensible, overcame superior forces. Mara offered a small, knowing smile. Come with me, she replied, turning toward the reinforced hatch leading to the dig site. A handful of senior officers trailed in wary curiosity. They descended a narrow spiral staircase into the excavation bay, where excavation lights revealed walls of pure crystalline metal honeycombed in swirling circuits of alien design. The air here was faintly electric, charged with latent energy that set hairs on end. Beneath layers of sediment the colonists had pried away, the remains of an ancient citadel sprawled outward like a dormant heart. Arlo Sevic stepped forward, gingerly brushing a finger across one crystalline vein. These cores, he said, voice hushed, are what we tapped for our emergency power boosts. Their energy density dwarfs anything in the Empire's databanks. The High Commissioner's eyes widened. You reverse-engineered Hithraxian technology, but this predates them by millennia. Mara nodded. It was our best-kept secret. We salvaged their power cells, integrated them into our railgun and turrets. We built redundancies into the grid. It wasn't mere brute force, it was adaptation. A murmur rippled through the emissaries. Commissioner Solon recovered his composure. The Empire will retrofit these cores into frontier outposts. Pariah will be recognized as the first line of defense on the rim. He paused, regarding Mara with newfound respect. And as their commander, you will oversee this program. As the delegation discussed protocols and supply manifests, the colonists gathered outside, watching the shuttles fade into the scarlet horizon. Children traced patterns in the dust. Veterans shared quiet nods of triumph. Above them, the ancient spires of the citadel shimmered in the late light, a promise of untapped potential. That evening, a celebration broke out beneath the domes, drumbeats echoing off metal plates, voices raised in song, the sweet tang of synth beer on every tongue. Mara stepped aside, gazing into the Crowder people, once deemed the weakest, now pioneers of a new era. Deep below, the alien citadel remained, its secrets still humming in the dark. And Colony Pariah, forged in the crucible of dust and fire, stood ready to unlock them one discovery at a time.